Hi, everyone that's just joining. We're going to get started with our second part of our course today on how to turn your board into a fundraising machine. So as you get signed up and signed in, feel free to chat us about what you'd like to learn today and any questions you still had from our first class, and we can get to those later on. So let me tell you a little bit more about CauseVox before we dive in. This webinar is hosted by CauseVox. CauseVox is a digital fundraising platform that helps you raise more with less effort. While a lot of other software is very clunky and complex and contract bound, CauseVox helps you tidy up your digital fundraising and helps you run donation pages, crowdfunding, peer-to-peer fundraising, and more in less time without the hassle. So if you want a donate button on your website and need a great form that's mobile optimized for that, feel free to come to us. Also, plenty of board peer-to-peer fundraising campaigns on CauseVox as well. So if that's something you're interested in, we do have the basic plan for you for free if you want to run your board fundraising campaign on CauseVox. So just going over a little bit more about our class schedule. So last week we did our part 1 of our course. That was recorded. It was sent out on Friday. So if you didn't get that, please let me know, and I can get that email to you today so that you can review that, share that with your team. For today's class, we're going to be going over part 2, which is really all about how to run a successful board giving campaign. So we'll be diving into that in just a moment. Aside from just the 2 live classes, we have plenty of things for you for additional resources. So we are going to be doing a live Q&A. So feel free, any questions that come up throughout our time, you can chat those in. There's also a Q&A feature in Zoom as well. So chat all your questions in. We'll get to them later. We also give you access to all of the slides in a PDF version of the course. So that was also included in the email on Friday, and I'll be sending out today's slides tomorrow. Also, you get access to both recordings of the 2 live class sessions, and as well as the CauseVox basic plan so that you can run your board fundraising campaign for free. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Joe to dive into the second part of our course today.
All right, thanks Candace, and thanks everybody for being here again. Welcome back to How to Turn Your Board into a Fundraising Machine, a 2-part class that we're offering in conjunction with CauseVox. I hope you enjoyed the first module and found it helpful as you work to expand your board's fundraising efforts. Now in this second module, we're going to be talking about a number of important topics to help you supercharge your board fundraising efforts, including how to run a successful and well-organized board giving campaign, and how to find the right people to join your board of directors, and more. So let's get started. Let's start by talking about how to run a successful board giving campaign at your nonprofit. While almost every nonprofit I have ever worked with has recognized the need for their board members to lead the overall fundraising efforts by making a donation, I've been surprised at just how many schools, churches, and charities fail to implement an organized board giving campaign. Instead, these organizations mention that they'd like board members to give. They may even include a line item in the budget for board giving. But instead of relying on a well thought out board giving strategy, their plan is simply to wait around and hope. This is a huge mistake. Every nonprofit, no matter how small or large, needs to hold an annual board giving campaign to encourage 100% of their board members to make a general fund donation, a non-restricted donation, to the cause. If your organization is not yet running a campaign like this, or you're holding a less effective informal board giving effort, I want to give you 3 reasons why your nonprofit needs to launch a more formal board giving campaign this year. First, More board members will give, and those that do give will give more. Do you know why annual fundraising events raise so much money for so many organizations? Because they're formal channels for giving that are well planned and well organized. Development teams sit down, they decide how much they want an event to raise, they develop a plan for sponsors and tickets and silent auctions, and they set a firm deadline, which is the date of the event. And they publicize both their goal and the results of their efforts. This is a highly organized and planned event that encourages people to give. Likewise, a formal board giving campaign that is well planned and well organized will encourage your board members to give and will encourage those who already give to give more. The board will have a concrete goal and a set deadline along with a formal ask. All three will combine to create a powerful incentive for board members to write a larger check. Number two, you'll encourage 100% participation from your board. Make sure that part of your plan for your formal board giving campaign is 100% participation. That is, that every board member gives at least something to the organization through the board giving campaign. This is important because many donors, most foundations, and almost every major philanthropist will want to know that your board is fully invested in your mission before they themselves make a donation. The best way to show this is to be able to announce that your nonprofit has a 100% board giving rate. A formal board giving campaign is the best way to encourage 100% board participation. And then third, it takes the pressure off of your development team. A formal board giving campaign takes the pressure off of your development staff when it comes to board fundraising. The best board giving campaigns involve the chairperson of the board making the primary ask, even if it's through a letter. The board knows the goal and sees progress. Thus, instead of spending all year waiting around dropping hints to the board, a board giving campaign allows the development staff to work with the chairperson to set and publicize a goal and to encourage board members to meet that goal. Ideally, one they all voted to approve at a board meeting, which creates buy in. Does your organization have an organized board giving campaign? Well, if not, or even if you do and you want to run a better one, here's the strategy that we use with clients to help them run a board giving campaign that gets results step by step. Step number one is to get board buy-in when you're running a board giving campaign. The first step is to get buy-in from your board of directors. It's a step that's often overlooked by nonprofit fundraisers, but it's crucial to running a smooth and successful effort. Simply put, your board must own the board giving campaign if it's going to reach its overall goal, which, let's be honest, the goal should be ambitious. The best way to get board buy in is for the chairman and the executive committee of the board to present the concept of a board giving campaign at a regularly scheduled board meeting. This discussion should occur at least one board meeting prior to the meeting where you launch the campaign. Your chairperson can explain why your nonprofit is holding an organized, formal board giving campaign. They can explain why board leadership is so important in fundraising, and they can float a financial goal for the overall effort. The board should then be invited to discuss the campaign and the goal and to vote to approve the plan. It's imperative that your board chairperson and or executive committee take the lead in announcing the campaign. So important, in fact, that the success of your effort relies on it. Board giving campaigns should be board led. Very few board giving efforts are successful when the development director or the development staff are the ones announcing the campaign and doing the solicitations. The primary driver of the board giving campaign must be the chairman and other executive officers of the board. Equally important is that your board vote on and approve an overall board giving campaign goal and timeline. Board members must go on record stating their approval of the goal and the timeline by which it should be raised. Step number two is to officially launch the campaign. At the next board meeting, after the meeting when the board votes to approve the campaign, the chairman should announce the official launch of the campaign. They should remind the board of the goal and the deadlines and set a deadline for every board member to make a pledge. Board members should be invited to fill out a pledge form for their board gift and confidentially transmit it by mail, email, or some other way back to the chairman of the board. Be sure to make provisions for board members who want to spread their gift payments over time or who want to pledge and pay through the United Way. Step number 3, a letter from the chairman. In the month following the official launch of the campaign, every board member should receive a letter from the chairman of the board, along with a blank pledge form, reminding them how important this campaign is to the overall mission of the charity, and reminding the board members to get their pledges back in as soon as possible. Step number 4 are regular updates. After a certain number of pledges have been received, the organization should begin sending out monthly email updates to the members of the board, letting them know how much has been pledged to date, how much has been received to date, what percentage of board members who have made a pledge so far, and what the average pledge amount is. Give these numbers only in the aggregate. I have found that the strategy of naming and shaming does not work well with board giving campaigns. That means putting out a list of board members along with the size of their gift and circulating it regularly generally does not have the desired effect for board giving efforts. Step number 5, follow-up calls. As the deadline for pledges approaches, your board chairman, and not your staff, but your board chairman, should make follow-up calls to those members of the board who have not yet made their pledge, asking them to do so. Your goal should be 100% board participation in the board giving campaign, as well as successfully meeting the overall fundraising goal for the effort. Remember, your board should take the lead in your fundraising efforts. Their participation in an organized, formal board giving campaign will send a strong signal to others that this nonprofit is well run, stable, and poised to do great things. Now that you know how to run a successful, organized board giving campaign, I want to talk about something else that's very important. Many nonprofits that I work with ask me, how do they make a pivot with their board? They say that they recruited their board before they realized that the board should be fundraising ambassadors, and now they feel stuck. They know that their board should be more helpful in fundraising, but they are not sure how to get their board to pivot to do so. In short, they're wondering, how can we ease our current board into board fundraising leadership? Don't worry, it can be done. Let's talk about how to do that at your nonprofit. I'm a strong proponent of the notion that your nonprofit's board of directors should be actively engaged in the organization's fundraising efforts. That being said, board members don't get involved with your nonprofit because they want to fundraise. And many board members feel that the nonprofits they serve ask them to go back to the same old people for money again and again, which obviously produces diminishing returns. And frankly, many nonprofits recruit board members with a notion that fundraising is only a small part of what the board does, only to change course when a consultant or a trainer or someone like me tells them that the board should be far more involved in development than it currently is. When this happens, board members feel shell-shocked and often reluctant. Much of the fear and anxiety that board members feel about fundraising is caused by nonprofits themselves. So often, development directors and executive directors approach board members with what I call fundraising dictates. These dictates usually sound like this: we need you to give us the names of 5 people we can approach for gifts this month. Or, it's annual gala time. Who can you get sponsorships from? Or, I want to set up more fundraising meetings this year. Which of your colleagues can I ask for a gift? With an approach like that, it's no wonder a board member would be reluctant to share her friends, family, coworkers, and business partners with a nonprofit organization. If the charity is that tactless with their own board member, imagine how forward they will be with her contacts. Your board fundraising does not need to cause anxiety. Asking your board to help you raise more money shouldn't be the cause for sleepless nights. The board should see fundraising as a partnership between the development office and the board, as opposed to a competitive venture where the development staff is constantly trying to trick the board into sharing more names and make more asks. The best way to reduce anxiety is to stop seeing your board as a source of revenue and start seeing your board as a source of introductions. Sure, your board should directly donate. We just talked about that. And yes, your board should occasionally be the people making asks from folks in their own network. But for the most part, your board should be introducing their friends and business associates to your nonprofit. And your organization should be slowly and respectfully walking those contacts down the cultivation funnel. Many times when I work with an organization that wants its board to pivot, to be more active in fundraising, I tell them to try this simple strategy, and it will probably work for your nonprofit too. First step, at your next board meeting, tell the board that you're changing tactics. Announce your intentions. You're no longer asking the board to go out and, you know, work their Rolodex and directly ask people for money and call in favors and do all the things that you used to do unless they feel comfortable doing that. Instead, you're asking the board to simply be ambassadors, to make introductions for your team to their network. Second, show the board how it's done. Walk them through your cultivation funnel. Tell them that when they refer someone to the organization, all they need to do is make the introduction, preferably in person. You can take it from there. You won't ask the person for money during the first meeting or call. You won't ask the person for money during the second meeting or call. Instead, you'll build a relationship with them. You'll cultivate them, and then eventually, if they're ready, you'll ask. Third, set up a series of non-ask events at your organization. Ask your board members to consider inviting colleagues and associates to these events. Remember, your board, remind your board, that you won't ask for money at these events. They're non-ask events, and you won't ask for money during the follow-up call. Sure, you'll eventually ask for money, but only when the person says that they really want to get involved. You need to build trust with your board so they'll trust you with their contacts. Time and again, I've seen this strategy work with nonprofit boards. Over time, usually 6 months to a year, the board starts to trust the development staff with their friends, family, and business associates. They start to make introductions, trusting that the fundraisers won't jump the gun. The nonprofit stops begging for introductions and starts earning them instead. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this plaintive cry from executive directors, development directors, and even board members themselves. If only our board would give us more names. I know they know more people. We need them to get us in to see their contacts, and we need to get them to do it now. I'm a believer that your nonprofit board should be helping or leading the fundraising charge, as we said, but I'm also a believer that boards can't do it all, and that organizations primarily should be building fundraising networks, holding non-ask events, and using other tactics to build prospect lists on their own. But let's assume that you're doing that. But one of the real weak spots in your fundraising really is the fact that your board members aren't opening up their personal networks to you. They have great contacts, but they're not letting you get to them. What can you do? Well, there's two options. The first option is you can beg them. This is probably what you're doing already. I'd say a good 50% of every nonprofit that I've ever worked across, a good 50% of all the nonprofits I've ever worked with or come across, asks its board members for new fundraising leads several times per year. And the vast majority of those organizations are frustrated by the lack of board response. So they'll start begging and pleading. We just need 3 names. Please help us meet our annual campaign goal. We're passing around a sheet at this board meeting, and we want you to write down 2 people you're willing to contact right now about this campaign. Please send your name, or they'll say, please send your list of names for the event invitations no later than Friday. If you don't, the board chair will call you relentlessly until he has them in his hands. This type of pleading gets old fast. Sure, it can work, maybe. It won't work well, but it can work. Your board members will probably throw you a couple of names here and there during these begging sessions, but it won't be the tidal wave you're hoping for, and you secretly know that they're capable of. Um, I know that you wish your board members came to you with new leads instead of you having to beg them for contacts, which brings us to option number 2. You can earn those names. Your board members are, for the most part, normal, practical people. They're committed to your organization, but they're just as committed to the relationships they have with their friends. To demonstrate the impact of these dual commitments on their willingness to put you in touch with their personal contacts, let's take a look at two hypothetical scenarios. The first is what begging looks like. If you're begging your board members for the fourth time this year to hand over some names for your annual fundraising letter, you're telling them that if everyone just gave 4 names and just one of those names ended up making a gift, you'd reach your annual fundraising goal. How do you think your board members feel about leveraging their personal relationships for you at this point? I'll tell you how they feel: nervous, protective, and wary. You're so desperate, you're begging them and berating them to put you in touch with people to receive a fundraising letter. Of course, they're nervous. They're worried you're going to do to their friends what you're doing to them, berating them until they make a gift. You've put your board in a terrible position, asking them to choose which relationship they value more: their relationship with your organization or their relationship with their closest friends and colleagues. Generally, this is a fight your nonprofit will lose. Now let's look at a second scenario. This is what earning it looks like. Your nonprofit, let's say, is holding a major event for free to announce a new initiative. The event's being attended by several local celebrities. As luck would have it, you were able to arrange for every board member to receive 5 free tickets to the event right up front, with backstage passes for a meet and greet after the announcement and pictures with the local celebrities. Would any of the board members like to participate, you ask? How do you think your board members feel now? I'll tell you, they're excited. They're already thinking, who can I invite to this event? There's 1 ticket for them, 1 for their spouse, and 3 extra for friends that they want to impress. Yeah, maybe they have at least 10 people they'd like to invite. Hands shoot up around the room. Board members want to know if there's any way they can get more than 5 tickets. Now, that scenario might be over the top. Maybe you don't have a lineup of local celebrities coming to your event, but it proves a point. Your board members do have more contacts, and they cherish the relationships they have with those contacts, and rightly so. If your organization does something to earn your way into that relationship in a way that feels right, is compelling, and shows that you can be trusted with the gift of an introduction, then your board members will make the introduction and let you into their network. Of course, most nonprofits won't be able to bring in celebrity guests for their next free event, but I guarantee you that every nonprofit can earn their way into their board's network without having to beg and plead, by holding great non-ask events, putting on seminars and shows, publishing unique reports and ebooks, offering compelling in-the-trenches experiences and hands-on philanthropy, pioneering new methods, and probably several hundred other ways. Now, before we wrap up this module and move on to questions, I want to talk for a little bit about how you can find the right people to join your board of directors. People who are willing to help you raise the money your nonprofit needs to thrive. The only way to have a strong board is to have a strong pipeline of prospective board members so that you can regularly bring new blood into your organization. These new members will not only bring new enthusiasm to your board, but will also bring in new contacts and a new network for your fundraising programs. Your fundraising team should constantly be on the lookout for new prospective board members. A great goal to start with is to try to always have 5 prospective board members in reserve. These are donors and supporters who would be great for the board and who have shown an interest in getting more involved. The only way to have prospective board members waiting in the wings is to take a proactive approach to identifying new board prospects. So let's get down to brass tacks. Where do you actually find great new board members? Many nonprofits that I work with say that they know that finding new board members is important, and they know that they need a pipeline of prospective board members in place, but they just don't know where to look to find new board members for their organization. So here are 5 of the best places that I've found to find new board members for your nonprofit. First, ask your current board members. One of the best places to find new board members is by asking your current board for help. Who knows what it's like to be on your board better than your current members? Ideally, your board members are passionate about your cause and well connected in the local community. Tell them you need help adding new members to your board and ask for their assistance. Ask your board members to think of a couple of contacts who would be great for the board, and set up meetings where the board member can introduce their contact to your staff. Promise that you will take it slow and will only ask the contact to serve on the board after several months of cultivation to see if they're a good fit. Number two, try searching your donor file. Your current donor file is another great place to find new board members for your nonprofit. Search through your current donor list to look for donors who are passionate about your mission, are well connected in the community, and have the capacity to be a mid-level or major donor to your organization. Make sure that the donors you identify as potential board members would be a good personality fit for your ideal board culture. Once you have a list of donors who meet your criteria, schedule one-on-one meetings with them to discuss your board and to gauge their interest in joining. Another great place to find new board members are your most loyal volunteers. While nonprofits naturally think about asking major donors to become board members, many never think about asking their most dedicated volunteers. But many nonprofits have had great success looking through their current donor list, finding, or current volunteer list, sorry, finding some significant volunteers that would be a good fit for the board. That being said, remember that all board members should play a role in your fundraising efforts. When trying to find new board members in your volunteer file, be sure that they're comfortable with also taking on a fundraising role should they join your board, including making donations to your organization and making introductions. Another place you can think about are board matching programs. Most major metropolitan areas and a growing number of smaller towns and cities have board matching programs, which help place mid-career professionals who want to join board of directors for local nonprofits, and they introduce them to your nonprofit if you're trying to find board members. So I'd suggest reaching out to your local United Way or community foundation for help locating board matching programs in your region. I've had some success in the past with board matching programs, but when using them, it's important for both you and the prospective board member that you both have a long get to know you period so that you can make sure the organization is a good fit for the board prospect and vice versa. Make it clear from the outset that if he or she believes your nonprofit would not be a great fit or they would prefer to work with another organization in a different mission field, they should let you know, and there will be no hard feelings. Here's another interesting idea, which I call dial and ask, dial and ask. I once worked with a nonprofit whose chairman was a hard charging business type who was super passionate about our work. When it was decided that we needed to significantly expand our board, he got on the phone, called every peer level business person in town, and asked them to place a person on the board. He explained our mission, told them why it mattered, explained that we were trying to put together the best business oriented board in town, and asked them to put, in his words, your number two guy or gal on the board. Amazingly, it worked. At least one-third of all the business people he called agreed to find someone at a high level at their company to serve on the board. Many did as our board chair asked and got their number two, either the COO or the vice president or another C-suite executive to join the board. All because our board chair loved the organization and was willing to think outside the box and spend a week picking up the phone and casting a vision for the best board in town. It can be hard to find new board members for your nonprofit, very hard, but don't give up. Your organization's mission matters, and because it does, your board matters. You need a strong board to help you raise the money you need to thrive. So use these 5 strategies to find board members and move the ball forward for your organization. Let's also talk a little bit about how to approach a potential new board member once you've identified them as a good prospect. Rare indeed is the situation where you or a member of your team meet a person for the first time and during that meeting ask them to serve on the board. Becoming a board member is a major commitment, much bigger, in fact, than simply making a major gift to your organization. Someone can write you a $1 million check and then never talk to you again, and you would still consider them a great donor to your organization. But in order to be considered a great board member, a person needs to commit a significant chunk of the next 1 to 5 years of their life to your nonprofit, depending on how long your board terms are. Thus, you need to treat potential board members as you would treat potential major donors. Just as you wouldn't ask someone for $1 million at the first meeting, you shouldn't ask someone to be on your board at the first meeting. Getting someone to join your board should be a 6 to 12 month process, which is why I suggest always having a bunch of potential board members in your organization's pipeline. In most cases, the board ask, which is when you ask someone to serve on your board, should come during the stewardship phase of the donor life cycle. You should meet a new potential donor, cultivate him or her, and then ask that person to make a monetary gift to your nonprofit. Once they say yes and make the gift, you should continue to build the relationship with them. It's only after that initial gift or gifts and after further cultivation and stewardship that you should ask the person to serve on your board. When asking someone to serve on your board, you need to remember to treat it like a true ask. Like all good asks, your board ask should be a couple of things. First, it needs to be an actual question, meaning that asking someone to serve on your board should start with something like, will you, or would you be willing to serve on our board? When you talk to someone, but don't actually ask them a yes or no question, it's not really an ask. Saying things like, I hope at some point you'll consider serving on our board, it's not really making an ask. Second, it needs to be a concrete step, meaning that you're asking the person to serve on your board, not beating around the bush and asking them to get more involved or to consider a leadership role. You want them to serve on your board, so you need to be clear about that. And you also need to be specific. That means you should be open and honest about what board membership entails. If you hold 4 board meetings per year, and every member is also on a committee which meets 4 times per year, then you tell the prospective board member that the time commitment is, at a minimum, 8 meetings per year. If the board members are expected to attend the annual gala, tell the person that as well. One of the biggest sources of frustration that nonprofit fundraisers have with their board members is that the board member doesn't live up to the fundraising team's expectations. Yet, so often, the nonprofit was so anxious to get the person on their board that they hemmed and hawed when asked what board membership meant. If you ask someone to be on your board, but they tell you that they're too busy to make it to most of the meetings, then they are not a good fit for your board. Let me repeat that. If you ask someone to be on your board and they say they'd be on your board, but they're too busy to make most of the meetings, they are not a good fit for your board. No matter how much you want to build a relationship with them, build a donor relationship with them, but not a board relationship. If they tell you, oh, I'd like to be on your board, but I don't want to get involved in fundraising, they are not a good fit for your board. Again, doesn't matter how prestigious the person is, if they tell you they do not want to get involved with fundraising, then they're not a good fit for your board. They might be a good fit for an advisory committee, they might be a good fit for something else, not for your board. Don't make the mistake of being less than candid with potential board members about what board membership entails. Be honest, be upfront, and let the chips fall where they may. At the end of the day, being honest means less frustration for everyone involved. Now, once you start to bring new board members onto your board, nothing kills their enthusiasm quicker than running boring, unproductive board meetings. In fact, I'd venture to say that bad board meetings are an epidemic that challenges the effectiveness of most nonprofit boards. Your nonprofit's board of directors meetings don't have to be tiresome, infuriating affairs. You can look forward to your board meetings, comfortable in the knowledge that they will move your organization closer to its goals and provide support and encouragement for your staff. So here are 7 strategies to make your next nonprofit board meeting more productive and successful. Number 1, start with mission. Board members get tired of the same old committee reports, budget numbers, motions, and votes. Most members joined your board because they care about your mission. Yet so many board meetings are utterly disconnected from the mission and vision of the organization. Rectify this by leading every board meeting with a mission-related item that reconnects board members with the heart of your nonprofit. Have someone your organization help to tell their story. Ask a board member, who is also a volunteer, to offer a slideshow presentation on his or her work. Ask a frontline program worker to summarize a day in the trenches. Your mission matters, so put it front and center. Number 2, why not have an agenda? So many nonprofit board meetings don't have a firm agenda. Some organizations will have loose agendas like number 1, old business, number 2, fundraising update, number 3, new business, number 4, adjourn. Other times, nonprofits will run meetings with absolutely no agenda at all. Board members want to come to meetings to get good things done without wasting time. Every board meeting you hold should have a firm agenda that is sent out to the members beforehand and enforced by the board chair. Include a time for new business at the end of the meeting for items that aren't on the agenda. Number 3, send a pre-meeting packet or binder. In addition to the detailed agenda, every board member should receive a packet of information or a binder with resources at least 3 days before the meeting, so they have time to review everything they need for the board meeting and prepare questions. This packet should include all the backup items and resources that will be talked about at the meeting. And if your executive director is going to talk to you about the budget, for example, include a copy of the budget. If your board chair is going to talk about program growth, include a chart that lists growth statistics. Number 4, start and end your meetings on time. Many nonprofits start board meetings 5 to 10 minutes late because our board members are busy people and they get here as soon as they can. That's what they say. This fosters terrible habits and makes even more board members arrive late because they know that your meetings never start on time. Likewise, if you start your board meetings late, you'll likely end your meetings late as well, which is frustrating for board members and for your staff. Instead, make it a policy to always start and end your board meetings on time. People will get the hint. They'll get there on time or they'll miss something. They will also know that you value their time because you end the meetings at the scheduled conclusion. Number 5, make your board meetings about decisions, not updates. Many, if not most, nonprofit boards focus their meetings on giving and getting updates. The executive director and staff give updates on programs and fundraising, the treasurer gives an update on the budget, and the board committee chairs give updates on their work. This takes up 80% of the allotted meeting time, and discussions and decisions are crammed into the other 20% of the meeting when everyone is already zoned out at the end. Don't waste most of your time on updates. Much of the information in your updates can be sent to your board members in the pre-meeting packet or binder, or as part of the regular email updates to the board. You only have your board together for in-person meetings once per quarter, once per month, or whatever your board meeting schedule is. Use that time to hold frank discussions on strategy and to make decisions that affect the vision and work of your nonprofit. Number 6, don't let one or two board members dominate. Lots of nonprofit board meetings are dominated by one or two board members, often the chair, who speak at, not with, the other members. This leads to board members who feel disengaged and who clam up during board meetings, no matter how good their ideas are or what resources they can bring to bear for the organization. Encourage honest and open communication at your board meetings. Encourage frank discussions. Encourage everyone to get involved and talk. And number 7, ask for action. You should be making asks at your board meetings. Sometimes these asks will be for money, such as when you're launching your annual board giving campaign. But more often, they will be for action. Every board meeting you hold should ask for action. The action should often be fundraising related. Ask members to make introductions for you. Ask your board to hold a non-ask event. Ask the members of the executive committee to accompany the executive director for one ask meeting this month. Whatever ask you're making of your board, be sure that it's concrete and that there's a deadline for action. Don't say, we really need help finding new major donors. Instead say, would you each be willing to help John meet one new major donor this month? It won't be for an ask, just a get to know you meeting. Who can help? If your organization is running board meetings that are less than productive, don't get frustrated. Use these strategies, ask for action. Don't focus on updates, focus on decisions and action. Most nonprofits can go from unproductive to super productive board meetings with less than a year of effort. Okay, I know we covered a lot of different topics today. I wanted to give you a lot of kind of strategies and step-by-step systems that you could use in different aspects of your board, including the board giving campaign, including how to run good board meetings, including how to get good board members on your board of directors. So lots of different topics, but I hope you found them helpful as you plan your nonprofit's board activities for the coming year. Now, I'm going to pass it back over to Candace, and we're going to take your questions, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. That was so insightful. I think just all of those tips about even running a board meeting, finding board members, it was really, really insightful. So thank you for diving into all of that. We have a few questions that have come in so far. Any more questions that anyone else has, this is a great time to ask them. We'll get to as many questions as possible. So, think through what you want out of your board and what are some of the real questions and issues you're facing, and we can definitely chat through those. So Diane had sent in a few questions that I wanted to get to. And so Diane's first question is, so with a board-led fundraising campaign, do they create the fundraising plan, or is this more of a collaborative effort between your board and the executive director or fundraising staff?
So just to clarify, we're talking about you're going to have two different things going on, right? So your nonprofit's going to have an overall fundraising plan, and your overall fundraising plan should not be written by your board. It should be written by the fundraising expert on your team. Assuming that you have a full-time fundraiser on your staff or more than one, that's the group. Your fundraising, your chief fundraising officer should be writing your fundraising plan. If you don't have a full-time fundraiser on staff, then it should be the executive director, someone who's involved with the fundraising every day and hopefully has a significant amount of fundraising knowledge. Secondarily, you could also have a consultant write the fundraising plan, someone who's an expert on nonprofit fundraising. You don't want to have your board write your fundraising plan. You do, though, as we mentioned in the last class, want to have them vote to approve it, because you want to get everyone on the same page and on the record as saying, this is the strategy we're going to follow this year. Then you have your board giving campaign. Your board giving campaign, the strategy for your board giving campaign should be collaborative. I mean, really, ideally, the development staff is going to the board chair, maybe the head fundraiser on your team or the executive director is going to the board chair and saying, look, we learned this great strategy for holding a successful board giving campaign. Here's why board giving campaigns are important. Here's why we want to run it a little differently this year. What do you think? And then you can collaboratively come up with a strategy for the board giving campaign. Then it should be the board chair, ideally, or if the board chair isn't comfortable for some reason, which they should be comfortable with this, but if they're not comfortable with it, then it could be another member of the executive committee on the board, or perhaps the chair of the development committee on the board. But a board member should be the one that introduces the board giving campaign to the board, that opens the discussion on the goals for the campaign, really just how much should we be raising, and then does the things like sends out the letter and does the follow-up. So the strategy for the board giving campaign should be collaborative, but in terms of the board facing fundraising, the frontline fundraising for the board giving campaign, that should be done by preferably the chairperson of the board.
Thanks so much, Joe. A few more questions coming in. So we have a question from Celia, who says, what would you do if 2/3 of your board has big pockets, but 1/3 don't? They get very intimidated and anxious because they can't give as much.
Well, so first of all, everyone on your board already knows that, meaning a lot of times we get worried that how are we gonna message this, because some people are on the board have a lot of money and some don't. I guarantee you that the people on the board already know who each of them are. I mean, they know that this group has more money than this group. They know it, and so it's already out there, and it's okay. The question is, how do you message it? And I like to message it by, as we kind of said this during the first class. I don't like going out there for a board giving campaign and saying, we want everyone has to give a minimum of $5,000 or whatever it is. And that becomes even more difficult if you have board members with different giving capacities. Instead, I think your board should come up with a board giving goal in the aggregate. Maybe your board giving campaign's goal is $50,000, let's say, that the board would give $50,000. And the board chairman or chairwoman should be out there acknowledging that, look, everybody has different capacity to give, and use that language we talked about in the first class. Say, we're asking everyone to give at a personally meaningful level. One of the reasons the board chairperson or a member of the board should be saying this rather than the staff is because the board chairperson should be saying, look, we're all really committed to this. We're all volunteers who are really, really committed to this. We know how important it is. And so as a board, we have to take leadership and ownership Our goal that we voted on is $50,000 for the board giving campaign, realizing that everyone can give different amounts. But I really want to ask you, as my colleagues on the board, to please to dig deep and give it a level that's personally meaningful for you, and leave it at that. You don't have to make it. You don't have to belabor the point that everyone has different financial capacity, because the board already knows that. I would just get it out there and not set a minimum, and instead just ask people to dig deep.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. Yeah, Diane sent in another question. So I guess this is a little bit more of maybe not quite directly board related, but um, her nonprofit has underwent a name change, and that has created a lot of confusion. So some people know them as one name, some people know them as more of like their umbrella name. So any suggestions on how to overcome not being known in the local community, and with alumni as well because of a name change?
Well, what I would probably do is, at least for a transitional period, become known as both. Meaning, you could say, we're XYZ organization formerly known as ABC, or you could say we're XYZ Foundation, a subsidiary of ABC Foundation. Just somehow get it out there so that for a year you're saying both things, and then slowly weaning off of the old name. I would also say that it's really, really important that your key stakeholders know and embrace the name change. It's not really a problem if the community at large doesn't know your name change. I mean, you can deal with that by being known as both for a while. But if your donors and alumni and past board members and past staff members and volunteers and past volunteers, if they don't know about the name change and really understand why you did it, then you've got a problem. So I'd be working very actively communicate with our stakeholders, and this includes people who were stakeholders in the past, to really, really let them know, hey, we've changed our name. Here's why. Here's our new name. I one time saw a nonprofit that did that sent out big stickers with the new name on it, telling people they can celebrate the new name by, putting the sticker on, or this car magnet on. Maybe that's not financially feasible. Maybe it is just for major donors, whatever. But really be proactive in letting stakeholders know and telling them why and getting them to embrace the change.
Yeah, I think that's really, really helpful, because I mean, I've seen a lot of organizations undergo name changes, and it's always a transition period. But I think just like having, the people closest to your organization, especially like the people closest in the recent past, be like well aware, and having like, yeah, kind of like the buy-in from them, so that like they can be aware when they're posting about you, that to promote that name change. I think that's really important, especially with past board members, like you said, Joe. So I think that's really helpful. I think that pretty much ends our Q&A for today, unless anyone else wants to go ahead and send any more questions in. You can always email Joe. So his email is up there. We'll also include that in our email that goes out tomorrow as well. So if you want to reach out to Joe directly, you can go ahead and do that. I wanted to show you, actually, for just a minute here. I thought, just based on our conversation, it'd be helpful for you all to see a board peer-to-peer campaign. So maybe I'll include that link example in that email that goes out tomorrow. So you can kind of see something in action. And so, yeah, CauseVox helps you raise more with less effort through our digital fundraising software, where you can run donation pages, crowdfunding, and peer-to-peer fundraising in less time with less hassle. If you'd like to learn more about CauseVox, feel free to reach out to us at support@causevox.com. You'll also see our email that goes out tomorrow, and feel free to reply to that directly as well. And we'd be happy to chat more with you about your board fundraising plans and needs and how to get that up and running on CauseVox, as well as any other fundraising needs that you have that we can help with as well. And so I think that pretty much wraps it up. And Joe, thank you so much for leading these sessions. Both Class 1 and Class 2 have been really, really insightful. And yeah, any more questions that come up, please, everyone that has attended, feel free to reach out. We'd love to stay in contact.
Thanks, Candace. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Thank you so much. All right, take care, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.